Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Hi, this is Caleb Barlow, and it's a beautiful day here in July, the week of the Black Hat Conference out in Vegas. And today we're going to be talking about securing SAP. But before they do that, I want to give a real quick little infomercial here. We're actually here at IBM hiring and looking for product management help. So if you're a former penetration tester or someone with an interest in product management, take a look at job posting SWG 0488664. That's SWG 0488664 on the IBM website. Or look at my Facebook page. You can find a link to it there as well. Also, a reminder that you can listen to this podcast on iTunes. And if you do listen to it there, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could rate the show and add a comment, because that always helps us in our search rankings. So today we're joined by Andreas Wiegenstein, who is the Managing Director and CTO at Virtual Forge. Welcome, Andreas.
Hello.
So, I guess probably the best thing to do here is start off by kind of giving me a little introduction on what Virtual Forge does and what you guys do with SAP.
Yeah, okay. Virtual Forge actually analyzes SAP custom coding, which means in SAP, when you buy the software, you get a lot of business programs that are deployed out of the box. But most customers want to customize that to their needs, and they have to write custom code. And when it comes to custom code, there are a lot of things that can go wrong, like in other programming languages. But in SAP, we have the situation that they have a specific custom-made programming language called ABAP, and all customers extend their SAP software by using this programming language. And our focus is to detect security problems that arise from writing these custom ABAP extensions.
So we're going to talk about the Virtual Forge Code Profiler for AppScan Source Edition. But before we do that, Andreas, I detect a bit of an accent. Where are you from?
Uh-oh. You got me. I'm from Heidelberg in Germany, and we also have very nice weather here today. And Heidelberg is pretty close to Walldorf, where SAP headquarters are in Germany. So, it's a 15 minutes ride by car from SAP.
Excellent, excellent. So, point is, you guys are tightly connected there where you need to be. So, and you're headquartered kind of just down the road. So I'm assuming you've got a rather tight cooperation with SAP.
Yeah, we do. They are also using our tool.
So I know SAP is a bit of a world of its own, and you kind of already mentioned, look, this is a programming language like any other. It can have vulnerabilities like any other. Can you give us some insights on SAP and, kind of the security of SAP systems?
Oh, well, in general, there are a lot of things you have to consider in SAP. Some of the things, some things you get for free in SAP that you have to write or custom code in other languages. And, for example, the login to the system is automatically handled by the framework. User maintenance is handled by the framework. You can customize certain rules for your password, complexity, length, how often you have to change them. This is all for free and provided by the framework. And but what you have to do in SAP, which is considerable work for many customers, is you need to configure roles and authorizations in order to make sure that the users in your company can only do the things you want them to do in your business scenarios. And there are very good tools for that, for measuring are the authorizations okay, and there are very, very many consulting companies centered around this topic, but they all fail when it comes to analyzing custom code, because for custom code, all the rules you have in the standard do no longer apply. That's why there needs to be specific things done for the custom code.
Yeah, so I suppose the other point, too, here is, because this is a specialized programming language, because there are specialized calls, you need to scan that with a tool that's made for scanning SAP code. You're not just going to throw any generic code scanner at this, right?
Right. This has varied technical reasons. First of all, the code in SAP is completely different, stored completely different than in other languages. It's not stored in files like you're used to in Java. It's all stored in the SAP central database. And the first thing you have to do is you have to get it out. So for that, you need a specialized solution. And then ABAP has a lot of commands that are totally different from other development languages. And because of that, and because of the architecture of SAP, they also have some constructs which do not exist in other languages and have specific need specific consideration if you do an analysis. For example, I already mentioned that you need to configure the roles and authorization. And ABAP has specific commands to check does somebody have the correct authorization for the business logic you want to trigger with your code. And this is a concept I have never seen in any other language. And so around that you can design quite a lot of test cases that check, is the correct authorization object checked here? Is a check made when a check is required? Is the check technically correct? Does the application respond correctly if the check fails, and so forth? So there are many things like that specific to SAP.
Well, there's two things that really strike me about SAP. One is that, when we're thinking about security, I always try to think about where are the crown jewels, which is usually the data, right? Where is the valuable data sitting? And, I think SAP, by the very nature of what it does, oftentimes holds that critical, sensitive, or personal information. But in addition to that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but people routinely have large amounts of customization of SAP to their businesses. So when did security become an issue?
Okay, first of all, you're definitely right. The crown jewels of the company are usually stored in the SAP system because they do all their financial transactions with SAP, the material management, the production is in SAP. So there's really a lot of data, also the HR data, of course, the personal data, that need to be protected. But,
So when did security become an issue around SAP systems?
Yeah, right. Security, like 5 years ago, nobody really thought that there are potential issues in ABAP because everybody thought, if I do my roles and authorizations correctly and if I use all the standard ways to lock down my system, user management, password policies, encryption, then I have no problem. But I think it was at the end 2010 when SAP started to roll out an increased number of security patches to the community. I think in the first wave, they let out more than 500 security patches in the same month. And that sort of created a momentum where customers started thinking about, oops, we have this kind of problem also in the SAP world, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah, so in short, it's not different than, there's no difference here between SAP and any other system that you need to protect, other than it probably has some of your most important assets that it's holding. And I would assume that everything from, espionage, fraud, insider threats, these are issues just like issues of someone coming in at this data from the outside as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you need to consider in SAP, because it's all organizations, it often happens, for example, that an organization buys a smaller company and integrates it into their own organization and thereby automatically inherits ABAP coding that now runs inside the organization, and you never know if this coding is really secure. Or you have business-to-business connections from your SAP landscape to a supplier or to a business partner, and you need to make sure that these can't do bad things inside your system. Or
it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think, in my career I've done a lot of M&A work, and it's something that people don't historically think about, right? When you bring two companies together, if one of those companies has poor security practices or vulnerabilities in their application, you not only acquire the company, you literally acquire the hacker as well. And there's even been some documented evidence of this, of company A being acquired into company B, and literally the hackers coming along for the ride. So that I think that's a great example of some of the things people need to do. So what's kind of your list of what companies should do to become aware of their risks in their SAP system?
Well, basically all of them should do, but mostly I'd say the companies that outsource their development, which is a common practice in SAP. You don't really write the custom coding yourself. You outsource this to other big players that are specialized in writing this custom code. And this often happens in foreign countries, and you don't really know if you can trust the developers that work there. And you may want to make sure that the code they write is free of backdoors. So these kind of companies that perform outsourcing should definitely check if the code they buy really meets their security expectations. And given that in an SAP system, most customers have at least 2+ million lines of custom code, the amount of code to check if they now start a manual analysis is extremely high. So it's really only feasible if you have a tool to do the work.
You know, that's a great example, because I think often, you know, when people outsource code development, they're typically looking for a cost savings or access to the expertise. Oftentimes it's done offshore. And, you know, it really underscores the need to not only ensure that you get the best deal you can to develop your software, but you're also getting the implementation of the security practice you expect. You know, everything from code scanning, which, you know, you may want to do or have a different group do, code reviews, quality checks, things like that. So at Virtual Forge, you all are in this business, and you've got Virtual Forge Code Profiler for our AppScan Source Edition. How does your product help?
Well, it can automatically scan large amounts of your code, and it can also consider the SAP standard APIs your code is calling, because the entire SAP code that is delivered to the customer is available as open source, or as source code to be more precise. So it's very easy to analyze the code, because everything is there as source code. And we can simply load all the relevant code your application has either customized, all your custom coding, or the code that you're calling, and check it for a big variety or large variety of security and compliance defects you may have in the code. And in the end, what we can do, we can provide a report which basically lists all the different kinds of tests we do, like do you have a SQL injection vulnerability, or a cross-site scripting, or more SAP-specific authorization problems, or do you access data across SAP clients. And under that, you get all the details of the findings, and they are even ranked by a probability and given a specific impact that is calculated by the certain business function it affects. Just to give you an example, in SAP, you may have a SQL injection, like in all the other languages that are out there, but since the SQL dialect of SAP only allows to dynamically compose certain parts of it, you can't, for example, not change the table you're accessing. Meaning, if you see a SQL injection, it's not only relevant to say there is a SQL injection, but we also check, is the table critical where that happens? And we can immediately tell the user, oops, this SQL injection has the potential to change your financial data. This is highly critical, address it. Or this other SQL injection, yeah, it's a SQL injection, but it only affects a temporary table which has no real relevance. You can check that later. So, and this kind of
So you're using your knowledge of SAP to literally help people prioritize where do they spend their time and their work.
Yeah, what we basically do is we mix the technical finding with the business knowledge we have of SAP to produce better results.
Excellent. So give us an example. All right, so we use your solution, we get some results. What's going to happen next?
Yeah, okay. What's going to happen next is that, given the history that most people did not consider security in their development process in the past, usually when you do a scan in the beginning, you find that there are a large number of issues in your landscape, which you may have to deal with or not, depending on your risk management attitude. Because we prioritize all of those, we can easily help companies to find out the most critical ones and help them fix them, and which is the first part of the process, to make sure you deal with the past. But once you are confident that the code you're now running is in good shape, you want to avoid that this good standard now degrades by adding new code, which is again potentially insecure. And this is the other aspect of our tool. We can integrate into the coding process of SAP and hook into the transport mechanism, which shifts code, for example, from a development system to a test system, and monitor all the code that is transported, check the code. Is it green regarding all the tests the company wants to run? Does it have no SQL injection, no cross-site scripting, and so forth? And only if it's green, we let it out of the system. So this is the second pillar of the solution, is to stay clean once you have a good level. You can assure centrally and technically that your coding quality is as you want it.
Okay, so I've gone through the scan. I've prioritized my results. I've now kind of got an action list of critical findings, and I've bolstered my development process by hopefully capturing some of this stuff as it gets developed. So how can I make sure that my system stays clean after this first scan?
Yeah. First of all, what we generally do is, if there is any finding, we have, like AppScan also does, written examples of how bad code looks like, how good code looks like, and what the developer should consider in this case. So there's a learning effect, which is an integral part of staying clean, to raise the knowledge and raise the awareness of your developers by having detailed descriptions in the report. This is one. And the second is, of course, as I already mentioned, that we can technically control what code is transferred between SAP systems and make sure that only the code that meets the quality requirements you can define as a customer, that this can only pass to another system. So this is a technical enforcement, a single point of check where all code must go through. Like when you go through an airport and you have to walk through these metal scanners that check if you have any guns or something with you, you can force all code to go through there.
So how does that work, Andreas?
Okay, how does that work? In SAP, if you write code, you write it on a development system. Once you are confident your code works, you can deploy it on a QA system. In SAP, this is called transport. You transport your code to a QA system, then someone else checks the code. If it's, again, it works as designed, then they put it on a production system. It's again transported. And the code profiler solution can hook technically into the transport mechanism and can scan all the code that wants to be or is to be transported, check the code, and if there's any red light, it can stop the transport, and there is no way the developer gets this code out of the system unless they fix it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you've literally orchestrated this being part of the development to production process.
Yep. We even made a possibility to create exceptions. There are some rare cases where you really need to put a transport to a QA system in order to prevent a bigger problem than the security issue. So someone then can approve that this specific code is allowed to be transported, again by an SAP standard mechanism called workflow, and then you can create an exception and say, okay, this time I let it through, but if it passes me again, I want to see it again.
So we've talked a bit about kind of the developer experience. What are the advantages of this approach from a business point of view?
Well, from a business point of view, first of all, by the initial scans, you can detect the risk you have in your code. You can also see, is there any bad code in my system, in my SAP system, that would jeopardize regulatory compliance, because we can also check, are there any bad things that violate SOX, for example, or FDA. So the customer can easily see, oops, if I do this, somebody can manipulate my financial transactions, and by that I have a SOX issue. So
this isn't just about security. In some cases, these scans might pick up, true compliance issues, which could send you sideways.
Exactly. So this is one of the business models where you can say, well, I want to have some means to give to the auditors if they want to check me to prove them that my code is free of any compliance issues. So they can deliver a code profiler report to an auditor, and they can clearly see then, okay, there are no issues in the system, so they can let them pass. And of course, the other aspect is this centralized scan when you transport your code to another system. This is very good for a business to have a single point of control to enforce the rules the company has on code quality on all the code that is being built, and thus make sure you are safe without the need to have somebody scan the system every day and read the reports to see if anything has changed.
Yeah, you're effectively looking for the delta of what's new, right? And you know, this is such an important point that I'm constantly talking about with development communities, whether they're working on SAP or really any other system. It's, you know, you're not done if you scan your code once. You've really got to be scanning it all the time. And I like the way you think about it, which is that once you've got a baseline, and you know, maybe you're working on that baseline. Maybe you haven't gotten through all of the issues that came up. You're starting with the high priority ones. But you also want to be looking for what's changed, what's new, because it's really easy for a developer to, you know, check in some new code that accidentally has a cross-site scripting error or SQL injection or something else, and you want to catch that early, because if you catch it early, it doesn't take a lot of money to fix it. It's when you catch it late in the process that it can be very expensive to fix.
Yeah, and for SAP, this is, again, doubly true, because in SAP, writing the code and fixing it there is really not an issue, but there are a lot of testing efforts involved with every business application you design. And when you fix a bug in a productive application, you may need to recheck the entire application again, for example, in case of FDA, to make sure that it still works as it's designed. And this is very expensive. So you should do everything you can to prevent a bug from from a development system to even enter the test system, so you don't have any retesting issues.
Oh, absolutely. So we talked about kind of the development process and what to expect. We've talked about some of the business advantages. What are the kind of advantages from a technical point of view of using a product like this?
Well, from a technical point of view, it's a good question. just pondering what exactly you mean from a technical point of view. You mean that a tool is better than human analysis?
Well, you tell me. I mean, certainly human analysis isn't going to work, but I'm assuming this allows you to get through a lot of lines of code fast. And
yeah, definitely. I mean, even if in SAP, if you want to scan large systems, for example, we have customers that want to scan their entire SAP system, which means their custom code plus all the SAP standard coding on that system. And in this case, we are talking about like 160 to 170 million lines of code they want to analyze in one scan. And here we see that there is a clear advantage to use a tool to do that rather than have somebody read 170 million lines of code. And the code profiler can do such a scan in less than 24 hours for even this large number of code lines you have.
So how many customers today are using Virtual Forge?
As a tool and productive use, I think somewhere around 40.
Well, that's fantastic. And what do you see as the overall market for this?
Well, the overall market for this is basically...
I mean, it's everybody that uses SAP, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are many customers, 100,000+ companies running SAP that most probably have written some custom code. Of course, some companies may have developed only a couple of lines, where others have developed a couple of millions of lines over the last years. And basically, all of these companies would benefit from better code quality, because the tendency to write new code, you write more code every day usually as an SAP using company. And the earlier you start checking the quality of that code, the less problems you have in the end.
Well, if people want to learn more about the Virtual Forge solution, I'm assuming they can check out your website, or is there any specific place that you want to point them?
No, the website is the perfect place. If they don't find it through the website, I walk over to my marketing guy and have a word with him.
Fair enough. And that's virtualforge.com, correct?
Yeah, virtualforge.com. Thank you for mentioning it.
All right. Anything else you want to mention, Andreas?
Well, I would like to thank you for this interview and giving me the opportunity to talk about our topic here in public. And that's been very, very interesting. And you've asked very good questions. And I think we covered basically all the important things I wanted to talk about.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Andreas. We'll have to have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you for joining the Information Security Podcast. The information contained in these materials is provided for informational purposes only. Nothing contained in these materials is intended to, nor shall have the effect of, creating any warranties or representations from IBM or its suppliers, or altering terms and conditions of any agreement that you have with IBM. The opinions and insights discussed are those of the presenter and guest, and do not necessarily represent those of the IBM Corporation. All product plans are subject to change without notice. References to IBM products, programs, or services do not imply that they will be available in all countries in which IBM operates. The information contained in this podcast is not intended to imply that any actions taken by you will result in any specific result or benefit. IBM, the IBM logo, and other IBM products and services are trademarks of the International Business Machines Corporation in the United States, other countries, or both. Other company product or service names may be trademarks or service marks of others. Copyright 2012, all rights reserved.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.